Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everyone. Today on our Quality of Life show, we are chatting with author Joanne De Simone. Her memoir is coming out September 17th, 2024, and you can get it now. It's published through She Writes Press, where you can pre-order it now. So go get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those places. In fact, just go to her website, special-educationmom.com. And the memoir is called Fall and Recovery, Raising Children with Disabilities Through Lessons Learned in Dance. And you know, dance is such an interesting art form and so much discipline. Oh my gosh. But then so much freedom that comes from dance. So I'm very excited to chat with her today. So welcome, Joanne. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here with you.
I'm so glad you're here. And I think your book is so important to so many parents across the country and around the world. I hope this does go global, right? Does that happen for you as an author? It'll go out everywhere because, you know, so many parents are dealing with the issues of parenting children that have medical issues and disabilities and all kinds of issues, you know. And so I think it's really difficult, as you know. And not only the parenting part and the supportive part, and there's just so many facets to it, right? But also the medical system doesn't seem to be a friend either in it all.
So yeah, it can be complicated for sure.
Yeah, complicated and so stressful, you know. So I think having a book that and also telling true stories, I think memoir is like more helpful sometimes than going, when this happens, you need to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always loved memoir. I mean, from the time I was a kid, I only wanted to read nonfiction. And I think, you know, in these circumstances, especially if you have a child who has a rare medical condition, you have to find your community and you have to hear the voice, you know, of the people who are living it. And so like when my kids were young, especially my older son, Benjamin, who has a rare brain malformation called lissencephaly. And so he was diagnosed in 1999. And, you know, I didn't have a computer. There was no access to internet, right? So I'd go to the bookstores and I would try to find something. But I remember, you know, looking at memoirs and trying to find someone who was living my experience. And a lot of times I found that the memoirs were like, oh, my kid has this disability and we figured out how to fix it and now it's all great. And I couldn't relate to that. So I was like, no, we need to hear more stories. You know, sometimes it doesn't end well, but you still, you know, can live with it and you can still experience joy. But you know, it's just more complicated and then we all lived happily ever after. So that, you know, definitely was a motivator for me. But absolutely, I think the thing that helps the most is to listen to other people's true lived experiences and put yourself in their seat and reflect on it, you know. And in my situation, I feel like, you know, of course I want parents to find this book. Of course, I want doctors, physicians, and, you know, all kinds of therapists and teachers to find this book. But I also want everybody to find this book.
Yes, I was going to bring that up because
you know,
there's a lot of understanding that is needed. You talk about ableism quite a bit. You want to touch on that because the way our society is set up is you would think would be more set up for this, but humans aren't, you know, humans are human.
Right.
And,
yes.
So I think that's a huge part of your book. And you start out talking about that in the preface, you know, so tell us a little bit about ableism and your thoughts on that.
Right. So, you know, as my kids got older, I started to pay attention to disabled adults and trying to listen to what they had to say. And, you know, that's when this word ableism sort of, you know, came into my knowledge. I mean, as a special educator, that wasn't something that anyone talked about. As a parent, you know, when my kids were younger, that wasn't something people talked about. But, you know, it's difficult. You know, I feel like as an educator and, doing
Mm-hmm.
so much studying on psychology, right? You learn about hierarchies and needs, right? And so I think that we often set up hierarchies, but there's a danger when you set up hierarchies when it comes to people. And that is what happens in our culture. And it's not, it's sometimes in your face and sometimes it's not. There's a lot of, learned ableism that we're all trying to deal with, even as parents. But it's just, as a parent, I'm not, if I'm not feeling like, this isn't the life I thought I was going to have, but, then again, I'm saying it's a perfectly fine life. We're a normal family in a lot of ways, but then there are other times where it's just like, oh, culture has
Mm,
told me it's bad to have a kid with a disability. It's a
yeah.
bad thing. But that's not what the message should be. But I want parents to know it's okay to have dark moments and to think dark things. That's human nature. You
Mm-hmm.
can't live there. You can't stay in it forever. But it's okay to have those moments and not feel guilty and not feel shamed for having a very, what I consider normal reaction to a very stressful situation.
I love that you say that because you have to go dark to go light,
Mm,
right? It's kind of that balance. We always have to swing to the extremes, right? To find our middle ground. It's a seesaw. And, when you looking at your history as a dancer and then also as an educator, especially a special needs educator, it's different when it gets down to your own kids, and the
mm.
fear. And I think the fear dictates the dark. But if you don't go there and entertain the dark, you aren't prepared for the true dark. Does that make
Yeah, no, I
sense?
agree. I don't think it serves anyone to just push it aside.
Yeah.
The thing that I really learned in dipping into all of, this, my life and dance and how it all connects together is that, being present in the moment. Everyone says when you have kids, oh, enjoy them when they're little, you're going to miss it, right? But there were a lot of times when Ben was little, I wasn't enjoying it because, he was having seizures all day long. Like, I don't want to be in that moment. I don't want to
Yeah.
stay there, right? So I came to a realization, through this process to say, like, hey, you know what? Being present in the moment is not specific to the good times. You
Yeah.
have to, you have to sort of welcome grief in. And just, I can't remember. I heard someone quote, like, pull up a chair. Yeah, grief, pull up a chair. Let's have it out. Let's talk about it, because otherwise I think you just push it down, you push it aside, and you really don't get past it then.
Mm. It's true. You're really right on that. With everything, you can't. Well, look, we have addictions and things like that in
Mm,
society because we don't want to face the truth, right?
mm.
So, it's part of it. It's part of like, do I really have to deal with this? And living in the present is all of it. Living in the present moment could be, yeah, the present moment is my child is throwing up sick or whatever, having a seizure. You can't just ignore that when it's happening, right? You have to
Right.
be there. It's like driving and someone goes to sideswipe you. You better not ignore it. You better
Yeah.
be aware. So I look at it as awareness, right? And just being realistic. And I think you still have to have some kind of something to guide you through that is kind of like when something's too big, like it could be
Mhm.
spiritual, it could be, everybody's a different thing. It could be a
Mhm.
godlike thing. It could be music. It could be anything that kind of gets you through because too much realism in a day could be painful.
Yeah, no, you got to find a way to process. And when I was a teenager, I was processing all that angst by writing. I have
Yeah,
books and books of poetry, that
sure.
I've kept, and that was the way I processed. And it's funny to me, I started writing this book. It wasn't like, okay, I want to, document my journey, and I think that I'm the voice parents have to hear. It didn't come from that. It actually came from other educators telling
Mm,
me you have to write a book. Like, educators need to hear this. And I was like,
mm.
okay, fine.
Well,
But
because you write anyway. You've been writing in magazines and, so you're a writer to start
yeah,
with.
well,
So you've got it.
right. But when I started writing this, though, I wasn't doing all that. I literally just, I was doing
Okay.
poetry, which I gave up. I hadn't written anything for years and years. And then when Benjamin was a baby, and I should say when he was 3 and he was aging out of early intervention, I wanted to give all of his home therapists a gift. And, I don't know, what do you gift someone who spent like 3 years of their lives in your home taking care of you,
Mm,
right? So, I was struggling to find something, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a poem to, solidify my gratitude for them and frame it. And that's when sort of the bug kind of came back in. All
mm.
of the creative juices started to get rolling. But I started writing this book, it was 13 years ago, actually.
Oh,
And
wow.
so never written anything longer than a poem. So I wrote an entire manuscript. And then I started to take writing workshops and learning how to write essays. And, then I was editing the manuscript the whole time and trying to figure out exactly what it wanted to be. Because in the beginning, it was really just a chronological, account of things that I felt I couldn't shake. I literally sat down and made a timeline and just put everything that I couldn't get out of my
Mm.
head on the timeline and started writing about those things. But you have to learn the craft of writing and, figure out, okay, what is this project and what is, how is it structured and what does it actually mean? What's the bigger picture? And how does it reach people beyond just me? How is it more universal than that?
Mm. It's really true. I mean, to go beyond, yeah, because you can write for yourself, like poetry, right? You can
Mhm.
write for yourself, but are you going to share it with others? And is it going to have that impact that you want, But so
Yeah.
you've been holding on to this for a while. Now tell everybody just an overview of both your sons, because we jumped right into this.
Yeah, sorry.
So just no, I mean, because it's great, but tell us a bit of an overview of their lives, each of them, because it all starts at birth, right?
It all starts at birth. Yeah. So Benjamin is now 25. But when he was born, everything seemed completely normal.
Mm.
Nobody, had any concerns. And then we went in for, regular 1 week checkup with the pediatrician. And he, did what all doctors do with newborns. He put a measuring tape around Benjamin's head and he said, his head size is a little small. And then he looked at me and he said, but your head size is a little small. So, maybe it's all fine. We'll just keep an eye on it. And, he left the room at some point and I was panicking. In my mind, I knew immediately something was not right. And there was an issue that we hadn't uncovered. And, we kept on just going for regular appointments. And then at 2 months old, he was like, we need to send you to a neurologist to, get some baseline information. And at that stage, the neurologist didn't think, everything looked fine, she thought. But from 2 months to 3 months, as an educator, I could see he wasn't making progress. So I knew something was not right. And by 4 months, the story all changed. We had to go through
Wow.
all kinds of testing. And yeah, then by the time he was 5 months, we got this diagnosis of lissencephaly. And so what lissencephaly means is
Mm.
it literally means flat, like a flat surface of the brain, smooth surface. So in some children, they have completely smooth surfaces of the brain instead of having any convolutions. Benjamin has some, but he also has large parts of his brain where it's just large ventricle space and no brain matter.
Mm.
So it was, if you looked at his MRI, you could tell immediately, no, this is not typical. Our doctors really never talked to us so much about, what the lifespan was. There
Yeah.
was one doctor when he was 18 months old, this one geneticist said to us, he has a 50% chance to live to the age of 10.
Man.
And yeah, so, we found support groups. There was like there was an email, group that was just for
Okay.
kids with encephaly. And I found this group, and, that's when I really got intimate with the world of what people were dealing with. And, really at that stage, the actual life expectancy was 2.
Mm.
Now it's still 10 from what I know. But, yeah, so it got complicated quick. There's a lot of medical stuff which came after some like when he was about 7 months old, that's when he started having seizures that we
Oh.
weren't sure at all if we were going to get under control. Like when he was heading for his first birthday, we thought for sure he was not gonna,
Mm.
we weren't gonna be celebrating that day. We did not think
Oh.
it was gonna happen. But luckily, we did.
Wow. I think back to when I was born, like in the, not to date myself, but in the mid 70s. I'm getting there. That over the hill mark is coming in a month. I'm just going to be there,
Hey.
but hey, I'll celebrate it. My cousin was born with encephalitis,
Hmm.
and basically her head swelled. Like,
Hmm.
and my mom said to her cousin, so it's like my second cousin, I think, said, "Hey, your baby's head is looking a little big, not to
Hmm.
be rude, but there's something wrong." And there was. And you're talking about the mid 70s. People didn't know what was going on back then. It's
Yeah.
ancient
Yeah.
times now. No, I'm kidding everyone. I mean, what we know now versus then. And she did die by the time she was a year
Mm.
old. And
Mm.
I mean, it's literally her brain swelled and I don't even want to get into the whole thing, but it was not pleasant for
Yeah,
anybody to be part of
I'm
that. It
sure.
was very sad, very, yeah, it was harsh. So when you mentioned the support groups, I think that's a crucial thing to touch on because I think sometimes you have an aversion to it when you go through things. The support group
Hmm.
even makes you feel like, okay, I'm in one of those situations in life. Like that's where the dark, does that happen?
Yeah.
Like, oh
You know
God,
what? I
no,
had that
I'm one
happen to
of
me with
those.
Sebastian for sure. Like when
Oh, yeah.
Sebastian got, when we knew he was going to be diagnosed on the spectrum, yeah, I didn't want to deal with any of that. I mean, I had had enough experience with children with autism. I had taught preschoolers gymnastics, preschoolers with autism. I have a niece who is on the spectrum. So it was already a part of, my understanding. And to be honest, so Sebastian was born in 2002, and I felt like, oh, so many times, in the media and in our culture, like I always feel like the finger gets pointed at the mother, right? So
Mm.
when autism was first sort of like coming into everyone's consciousness, it was, oh, kids are autistic because their mothers are refrigerator mothers, right? It was always
Oh,
our fault. So I was like, I don't want to hear anything anybody has to say, right? Every day it was, hey, it's the chemicals you're using in your home. Hey, it's the food you're eating. Hey, it's always us, right? Like, can we leave the
wow.
moms alone? So I did remove
Wow.
myself from it because I just
That's
didn't want.
harsh.
Yeah, it is harsh, and I that's why I think moms, we really take the brunt of it in this society. So I'm like, hey, moms, if you're out there feeling isolated because, you're not feeling so hot about this, you're not alone. Come on over.
Oh, wow. So it really is powerful to do then, because I think there's that tendency to nurse it ourselves, to,
Mm.
to do that. So I think that's really good advice. Yeah. To don't hold on to, and so, yeah, it's like, what did you do wrong? Did you use this cleaning product and then that happened? Yeah. Wow.
Exactly.
Man, society is kind of cruel, huh? I'm just
I don't
saying.
know, all the way cruel. Yeah, all the way cruel
Well,
sometimes.
how are schools? How is the education system? How, because I mean, you're a teacher. How does
Right.
that help with I mean, is there education to be done for the education system? Like,
Oh, of course. Look, I don't think, nothing's perfect. I think there's a lot of educators out there who are in it for the right reasons and are trying to do the right things. And then there are plenty of people who are burnt out and should be long gone and are doing harm. I mean, for myself, I felt like, okay, I understand special education law and I know what my children's rights are. And I have experience sitting at the table at an IEP meeting, right, with schools. If you don't have all of that, it's really intimidating. You're sitting, at one side of the table and there's a bunch of, specialists across and we're the experts and you're just the parent. A lot of people
Oh,
feel like that, but what I felt like immediately the first time I sat on the parent side of the table, I was sincerely humbled because I felt like, wow, I didn't understand the parents. I didn't get them. And I felt terrible about that. I thought I was a really good educator and then I felt like maybe not so much, there's no class, in special education, there's no degree in college you could get that will prepare you for the emotional side of being a parent. So that's where there was this
hmm.
deep hole for me. I
Wow.
didn't know what to do with that.
Hmm. And tell us about the dance side, because like I was saying in the beginning, dance is so much about discipline and freedom. We're back to that seesaw again, the dark and the light.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
discipline of dance, what you have to do for your body and the practice, but then that beautiful freedom that comes with it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do everything unconventionally. So I didn't actually start dancing until I was 19. So I had been a gymnast, and I was always a mover, always a mover. And I loved dance, but when I was a kid, it was, we don't have enough money. You have to pick one or the other. And I picked gymnastics. So when I was 19, I had gone to college for about a year and a half thinking I was going to be an accountant because I loved numbers. and
Oh,
and then I dropped out because I didn't know really what I wanted to do. And I felt like I'm just taking all of these boring core classes and I just can't do it. I can't do it when I have no, direction to go. And so I took 6 months off from college. And in that time, I started dancing and I decided that was it. I wanted to be a performer. So I went back to school and at Hunter, there was no special requirements at that time, to be able to join the dance program. You just were able to, go ahead and claim it as a major. So I started dancing then. And one of the teachers that I had was a member of the José Limón Company. And José
mm,
Limón Company is a classic modern dance company that's, it's lovely and still in existence today. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was learning all of these bits and pieces of the Limón technique. And then
mm,
in one of my final semesters, one of the last classes you take was a class where you did a big production and a choreographer would come in and create a dance on the company. And instead of having an original piece done, this teacher, Jim Clinton, who was already at Hunter, who was in the Limón Company, he reconstructed There Is a Time with us. So There Is a Time is based on Ecclesiastes 3, to everything there is a season and a time to
mm-hmm,
every person under the heaven, right? So that experience just solidified for me, like that was what I wanted to do. So
mm-hmm.
I started taking Limón classes outside of school. And when I graduated, I continued there. And then I was fortunate enough to tour with the Limón Company. So
Cool.
yeah, it was a fantastic like full circle experience. But at the end of that tour, there was an opportunity to audition to be like a permanent member of the company, and I didn't get chosen.
Oh,
And and I was just like, I knew it was going to happen, like I just knew there was someone else that, was fantastic that I knew that they liked and they were going to pick her. But I was still, like, I've been here for 2 years, I really want this. I felt like it was my destiny. And my teacher at Hunter had unfortunately passed away. So I had put this horrific pressure on myself that I was going to somehow carry out his legacy and I was going to carry on all the lessons that he taught me. And I walked out of that audition knowing that this wasn't going to happen. And I
mm,
knew I couldn't do anything else in the world of dance, that it wasn't going to feel as fulfilling somehow. And I just had to walk away from it. And that's what I ended up doing. And I did some soul searching and I got married, and then I went back to school to be a special educator. And, life is
Yeah.
ironic. I have these two children.
But yeah, then the children, and then that comes with, a lot of extra care that's needed, right? So,
Absolutely.
so dance was dance, like I was saying, at the beginning, you need something more than the reality. You need that escape too.
Mm.
But mindfulness, I think
Oh,
dance, the mindfulness is, and breathing, I think the breath work and the mindfulness, that is out of dance. I did dance too,
nice.
many years ago. And I think there's something to it that that's where you can go and be very present in the moment, very
Mhm.
focused, but let everything go away, yet you're incredibly mindful. Because every
Yeah.
move you make, even just how you move your fingers, did you move them too fast? Were they too jerky? Like it has to go. I mean, every little part of your body has to be in sync with what the dance is, the
Yeah.
steps.
And every movement is got a purpose, right? Like there's nothing haphazard in dance choreography. Everything is,
No.
is meaningful. And it's really funny. I mean, you really nail it with this idea with mindfulness, because the funny thing to me was it, it wasn't until I wrote the book that I was like, wow, they were really teaching us mindfulness. Like it hadn't
Yep.
dawned on me then. That wasn't part of anybody's vernacular, right? Like one of the things that Jim would have us do as a warm up in class is he would have us lie down on the floor and close our eyes. And he would, guide us through this breathing exercise. And he would tell us, just notice, don't try to change anything, right? So you're lying on the floor and you're like, oh, my head is tilted to the left. Like I want to straighten it out. It's like, no, don't change anything. And it was such an important sort of revelation for me. And again, like putting all these things together, I'm like, wow, it's interesting, right? In special education, we want to look at the whole child. We want to see what's their strengths and how can we use those strengths
Mhm.
to support their challenges. But on the other side, we're also, in order for a child to receive services, they have to meet a certain criteria of deficit. And so
Oh, wow.
you get stuck in this deficit model of, okay, this is what's wrong and this is how to fix it.
Oh, wow.
But
This
when
sounds like our welfare system.
I
Yeah.
mean, hopefully,
Well, I mean, there's good parts to it. And then there's like, it's, yeah. Wow. Okay. Sorry.
yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. So, like for me putting these ideas together, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like if I can lie on the floor in a dance class and know that things aren't quite right and know that some things just don't need to be changed or fixed, I can put that mindset in when
Mm,
I'm dealing with my children. Right? This is not something that has to change. It's
mm,
okay to be perfectly imperfect.
hmm It's true. Because even in choreography, there is a breathing space, right? And every little movement is counted for. However, there is a breathing space, and it's when it all goes with the flow, when that balance part happens, that in between the seesaw, right? You go to the
Mhm.
dark and the light. It's that in between where it's like, an energy flow. It really is once
Oh,
everything comes together. It's beautiful. I mean, that's what makes these performances so like amazing is once everything's in harmony and in sync. Did it help your background of dance help your son, one son that is an athlete as well? Because
mhm.
there's discipline to that. But once you're in that mode and you're running, you're in that mode. And it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's really healthy.
Yeah, I actually, when he decided to start running, that was his own thing. He was in middle school and he had been in self-contained classes for most of his educational career. And he wanted to make friends. He wanted to make more friends. When you're in a self-contained class, a lot of times you're not living in the same neighborhood as the students in your class, and it's not particularly easy to then like hang out with each other after school. You know, most of these kids take the bus to school, so parents aren't meeting each other. So it's not like, hey, you want to make a play date? I don't know these people, right? So he felt like he wanted to be a part of the larger school community and not confined and not have someone tell him, these are the only friends you're allowed to have. So he
Okay.
picked sports, which was funny to us because he had not played sports and we didn't think he was inclined at all. So, you know, but he wanted to do it. So he started in middle school and, you know, it was a struggle for him. You know, they had to run 2 miles or something in their meets and he couldn't do it, but he would skip if he couldn't run. He just kept on doing it, kept on doing it. And by the time he got to high school, you know, he was like, I want to be on varsity. And I was like, okay, you know, there's a lot of really fast runners. That's a great goal. It might take a while, so don't be discouraged, you know. But in my head, all I kept thinking was sports lends itself to learning life lessons. And what I wanted him to get from it was exactly that. Take the lessons you learn from running and generalize those skills into your life. Because that's what I felt like writing this book allowed me to do with all that I had learned in dance. And, you know, it also made it easier to talk to him about things that he was finding challenges with, you know, if there was something, you know, if there was something academically he was struggling with. And we'd say, hey, you know, how are you dealing with that? Think about, you know, when you're running, like, what did you do, right? You kept working hard. You kept believing in yourself. And then eventually you got the reward, right? So take that with you. You can do hard things, but you have to put in the work. And it helped him so tremendously. I just think I'm so grateful that he has that and continues to have that, and that I know that it will continue to evolve for him and he'll learn from it the older he gets.
You know, I think too, you're doing something like when something is, an impact, you know, where everybody would think it's a negative impact, right? We're dealt the hand of cards that we're dealt, and everybody has something. Everyone has something. It sounds like for you as a mom, you know, and your husband, you know, this is a whole bunch. This is a lot to handle. And you can go dark and depression side, which is very easy to do, but you really can't. But having something that is productive and positive, you know, I think that really helps move forward and rise above what could be the negativity and start to look at things in a different way and paint a different picture and creates a new set of cards in your hand. You know what I mean? It really can. You know, Joan Baez, my favorite quote is Joan Baez said, action is the antidote to despair, because you could be in the worst place in life. And, you know, everyone's worst place is a different worst place. And that is still a temporary spot. It's how you handle it. And yes, you can get down, but you can't stay there that long. You're not allowed to stay down. It's about doing something. And I think this is like such a positive lessons. I think you've all learned so much through this.
Definitely.
You know,
So I say in the book, one of the lessons I learned, I say pain is the messenger, not the enemy. So, you know, if you have an injury when you're a dancer, I feel like, you know, when something hurts, you end up like you contract and then you're focusing just on that one thing and then it makes it hurt more. And, you know, I say you have to give your pain the attention that it deserves, right? You want to take care of an injury. But then when you've done everything you know that you've had to do to manage that, you have to refocus on all the things that are working well. So on stage, right? Oh, okay, I have this little thing going on with my foot, but man, my upper body is free and it's moving beautifully. And then the audience can still take in the message that you're trying to convey instead of going like, why do they look like something's bothering them? Like there's something wrong with that. You know, like you can limit what you have to do, but you can still have freedom. So I feel like you know, to further expand with that too, is in the Limón technique and why the book is called Fall and Recovery, right? In modern dance, gravity is something that you use to generate movement. It's not something you're trying to work against. So
Right.
you say seesaw, I'll give you the image of like a swing, right? So when a swing is falling and it gets down to the bottom, and then, that energy allows it to continue up until it reaches this weightlessness point at the top. And so I think to myself, when I'm down and I'm falling, I know that my intention is to fall and then continue to rise. So yeah, it's not going to be down at the bottom forever. You're going to fall with the direct intention to rise.
Yeah, I know that because, falling really sucks. As a person with horses as a kid, and when you're falling and you're like, uh-oh,
Oh,
and you have split
yeah.
seconds and get your hands off the reins so your horse doesn't drag you. And if you don't learn
Oh,
that lesson, you will learn that
man.
lesson.
Ooh.
If you don't learn that immediately, and it's all about how you land, and you literally don't even have time to think. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to fall,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds weird, but if you don't learn how to fall, it's actually the most important lesson of horse
I believe
riding
it.
is learning
Oh,
how to fall. Because if you
that's
don't,
funny.
you're going to get hurt. And
Oh,
and brutally, you can break your hands. I learned how to fall being dragged. I have fallen
hi.
and had the horse, still walk over my feet, not even just a walk. I mean, not my feet, my hands, because the way I fell and, spread it out and the horse is still going and, no. And then they turn around and look at you like you're stupid. Like you took the bait. You didn't read me. It's like goes into that mindfulness lesson too. Because if you're not reading your horse and it's
Mm,
like people walking around with their cell phones. It
mm,
blows my mind. And people walk their dogs with their phone.
mhm,
You're not
mhm.
aware when something happens. You are absolutely not aware. The mindfulness is out the window because of cell phones. And so that's when weird things happen and you're not mindfulness. There is no mindfulness. There's no hearing a bird or hearing a car
Mhm.
swerve around the corner because you're too busy doing this
Yes.
over
No,
here.
it's
Mindfulness is key. Riding a horse, you have to feel their muscles of how they're
mm,
tensing up. Oh, they're going to try and buck now. Why are they trying to do that? What did you just do as the rider? So that mindfulness goes into horse riding too. I think that's kind of they're parallel in that level and you can fall and you better get up because the longer you lay there, unless you're really, if you broke your back or something, you better wait for professionals. But the longer you
mm.
lay there, the worse it gets. And you're right, if you focus on the negative, that's really where you're going to be. You know, you need to get through it. And obstacles in life are there for a reason in some way. It sounds really brutal and horrible, but in some way you learn through it and they do bring beauty to you in some way. Not always as fast as you want it. I don't think it ever comes as fast as you want it, right? The nuggets of
Right.
good that comes from it, but it's hard. It's hard.
Well,
Yeah,
life is hard.
it is. And I'm
I mean,
glad you
no, really,
laughed.
no one's got it easy. No one's got it
I'm
easy,
glad
no
you
matter
laughed through
what
it
it looks
because it's
like.
true. You have to go, okay, well, now what? And then it happens like you had two children, both giving you challenges,
Right.
incredible
Yeah.
challenge. It's not just one. No, now we're going to have two.
Yeah.
And
I spent
there,
a lot of
yeah.
time with that. Like, really? Really? Did that what? It would have been too easy for me? Just, like, they're all typical children. I had to have that challenge. Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's wild. Life does that. It's like, how much more do you want me to handle? And did you ever want to go outside and just, get a piñata out and smash it out to get the candy? Did you ever get that frustrated with it? Like in like, it's so much challenge because it challenges you as a human being.
Yeah.
And it, you, because like you were talking about going to a dark place, you go through all the emotions, let's put it that way. And yet you care for your child, but at the same time, put the piñata up
Yeah. No,
outside.
no, definitely. And I think every parent, no matter what child you have, gets a moment where like they're just done, right? They're teetering on some ledge that they're not sure how to step back away from. And for us, we had we grew up in Brooklyn, and the kids were born in Brooklyn. And when Sebastian went into preschool, we opted to put him into a general education preschool. In New York, you had that option, and then they would place a special educator in the classroom to work directly one-on-one with your child for a certain
Oh,
amount of
wow.
hours per week. Yeah, so they call that an itinerant teacher. So we opted for that. And, the first year we did that, it worked out phenomenally. He just made so much progress. The next year was a little bit sketchier. I think his teacher was getting frustrated with him. And so then we moved to kindergarten, and he was in an inclusion class. And I knew that was a risky placement for him because he just felt like the perfect fall in the crack kind of kid, right? He knew too much to be in a self-contained autism class, but not, quite steady enough to be in a regular general education class. And I thought, okay, well, this is a good compromise. But it ended up failing miserably. And it started like in October of the school year, getting the phone calls, come in for meetings, like this isn't working, right? And then, you're flooded with all this negative information about your child. And then, we hired a lawyer, and we were trying to sue for private school. And then
Wow.
we were on this search for private school. And in Manhattan, private schools are, it's special education private schools are as competitive as any other. So, there were schools that
Wow.
wouldn't take him. There were schools that didn't have any place to, any seats left. And we finally found a place in Brooklyn that wanted him. And we were like, great, let's get this done. And then we got hit with all of these roadblocks in the Board of Education side. And it was like, okay, this report isn't ready and it takes 3 months. And oh, the placement officer is away for a few weeks and now that's dragging. And then the school that really wanted him started filling up their seats. And so the clock is ticking now. And we're like, okay, there is nowhere
Wow.
else to send this child. And we've got to get him this seat. And we, filed due process, and we had what's called a resolution meeting. And, it was literally over the phone. I was walking home from work, and we have this resolution meeting, and they say, yep, nope, your case is solid. We're going to give you, private school funding. But the only problem was the day before that meeting, the school filled all their seats. So he had nowhere to go in September. I didn't want to send him back to public school. And I was just, I was completely lost. I was at the
Wow.
lowest I could possibly be.
Well, because, now you're making me think the school system and the medical system are like the same of difficulty. And the insurance system, all of those systems that are supposed to be systems, they're not well-oiled machines in that level of understanding. And so it's like this extra leg of work other than that goes beyond parenting, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, you have to learn to do, so many things. Like, oh, you got to be an expert in insurance. You have to be an expert in special education law. You have to be an expert in child behavior, and you have to have a full-time job to boot on top of that. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like, oh, and be human. This
Right.
is, no, that's hard. No, that's hard. And then find the joys, you
Find
know,
the joys. Yeah.
while you slam the phone down on someone, it,
Right.
throw it across the room. Better get insurance on your phone.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, yeah, we don't slam anymore. That was really fulfilling. I miss that.
I know, right? I know, smack. Yeah, it really, really, that used to really hurt people's ears too, right?
Yeah.
That was bad. Yeah. And
I
then,
think, good.
no, go ahead.
No, I'm thinking too, like a lot of what parents deal with also is, you know, there's so much you have to think about in terms of the future, but you're not really allowed to think of the future because you have to stay present. Because that's the first thing, like, the
Yeah.
first thing a counselor said to me was, hey, life's a one day at a time event. And I'm like, hey, I need to figure out what's going to happen if I drop dead first, right? Like, what am
Yeah.
I going to do? So, there's always that struggle, right? To want to, try to imagine what's going to happen in the future. And I say it's forbidden fruit. You can't bite that apple. Like, you have to take care of the logistics. It's true, but you can't sit around and think, oh, what are the things my child is not going to, accomplish, and what are the milestones we're not going to part in, right? Because that you'll never come back.
So,
think it and then move. Find the joy. Like my mother used to say, don't borrow trouble. Right? Like, don't think about the things you don't have to worry about yet. That's not something you have to worry about.
That's good advice, man. I like that. Don't borrow trouble. We'll borrow joy though, but then we want to keep it in our pocket. It's like it's mine.
You have to share that.
That'd be thievery. Yeah, you don't want no thievery allowed. But so going back to the groups, I imagine that has got to be really helpful where people are sharing their stories and people can identify, right? And even to navigate all these so-called systems that are supposed to work.
Yeah. With Ben, it was really the most terrific, like, lifeline. I felt like, I was like, okay, I can climb this mountain now, because it was, okay, like, these are the doctors that you want to look into who are the specialists, because there were so few at the time, like geneticists, who really knew anything about lissencephaly. So I was like, okay, these are the people you want to go to. And hey, these are the medications that are frontline for infantile spasms. Like, talk to your doctors about that. Or, hey, look, we have, New York has a Medicaid waiver you could apply for. This is how you do it. Like, no one's going to tell you those things other than parents. You're completely lost without it, And at the end of the day, sometimes there isn't an answer. I can remember, I'm going to date myself, like sitting up late at night on like AOL chats with other parents, when it's just like, I can't sleep, right? This is what's going on in my head. And they get it. Like, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to excuse yourself. You can say what you need to say, and they're going to know exactly where you're coming from. And you don't have to worry about people judging you, because there's a lot of judgment. The
judgment part. And then don't you as a family, and even you and your husband, have to operate in like a team kind of way of making things work, yet not like, if they're not working, you can't really show it, or you can in a realistic way, but not let your kids feel bad. You know what I mean? Like, that understanding of getting through things. It's not like you can just blurt it out the dining room table every day.
Yeah,
but you still have to navigate this
after bedtime, right?
Oh my. So that's what I'm saying is like how things are communicated in a household like this. There's got to be, that's a huge part of it. Of how to get through this, and yet things are, if we don't do this now, this is going to happen, and oh my gosh, man.
And, my husband and I are often on the same page, so that's good. We have very different processes in terms of how we, get anywhere.
Sure.
How much acceptance we have on any given day, is going to be different. Like, I remember when Ben was first diagnosed, the parents said, it takes 5 years to come to acceptance. And I always thought that was sort of funny thing to hear, because I thought, like, why 5 years? And, if you get to 5 years and you're not there, what the hell does that mean? But, I came to feel that, it's not, acceptance isn't like a destination. I think it's fluid. I think that acceptance is fluid. There are days and moments you're going to be like, hey, yeah, it's all good. This is who we are. And there are going to be days where you're like, yeah, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I don't want this today.
Yeah.
And there, he's got a very private way of dealing with his emotions, and this, and I had to accept that, and the beautiful thing is when we do our own things and then come together and sit and discuss, it's always like, wow, we're exactly on the same page, and we did it differently. That's great. That's sort of always how I pictured marriage and relationships anyway. Like, you want to be able to walk side by side, right? It's not about ownership. It's not about, any of that, or one person telling the other something. It's not somebody in control. We're doing this together, and we make a whole. And that's the way I try to, keep it in my mind. With the kids, it's interesting that a lot of the dynamics that we've struggled with, like, Benjamin is nonverbal. He's total care and, in a wheelchair, and that's all, that's who he is. That's fine. And Sebastian, struggled a lot with, his emotions. And then, he would have to witness things going on with Ben, and that would stress him out. So I would have to, let's say Ben's having a big seizure. Like, I have to rescue Ben, but I have to figure out also, how am I going to protect Sebastian in this moment? Because I don't want him to have a meltdown and be overly concerned. Seizures for him, are very concerning, right? They are to me too, but I'm also really acclimated. I'm used to dealing with them, but I have to, deal with the medical thing and then deal with, Sebastian's emotional side of things. So yeah, often there is some very tricky dynamics that we specifically have to deal with, but it did get easier as everybody got older. Sebastian is, 21, and so we can have, more frank conversations with him.
Oh man. Yeah. It just, you're balancing everybody at the same time. You're a juggler. Yeah, you're a juggler. Good thing you know how to dance. Well, you talk about fluidity too, and keeping the calm, because it's the same thing. I mean, as soon as you elevate emotion, right, everyone's going to feel it around you. Energy talks even more. Sometimes energy and how your position and the posture and all of that, it goes right back to dance, tells what's going on, the body language. You don't have to say anything, but your body language speaks volumes. And absolutely. Dance is body language, quite frankly. It is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think Martha Graham said movement never lies.
Yeah.
So that you're right. And Benjamin is really keen on reading people and emotions. I mean, he's highly intelligent when it comes to that. So yeah, all of it. There's a lot of breathing that goes on when I'm in crisis.
Yeah,
a lot of breathing. Yeah. But the sort of con to all of that is, I think, John and I are so accustomed to doing what we have to do in all these different kinds of difficult moments that I think we make it look too easy to people on the outside. I think that they just think we have it all together. Yeah, it's good.
Well, practice. But at the same time, it goes back to dance, right? Doing all of this to me is just, having these conversations, very candid conversation, right? Is so important for those who are going through this, and especially for people to have an understanding of what parents are going through. You see parents, pushing their child in a wheelchair, no matter what age, could be 20, 30, 40 years old. And you've got to understand what they're going through on the other side, and have some respect and some open thoughts, and, kids, of all ages, depending on what they're going through and what their situation is, sometimes can have a freak out attack. And, you go out to dinner and, oh God, everything goes crazy. Have some compassion. We do a lot of travel and tourism work on our podcasts and magazines. And one of the areas we cover is up in the Sequoias, California, in Central California, where the giant sequoia trees grow up in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. There's a community called Visalia. And this town is actually one of the first autism credited towns. In other words, everyone in the hospitality industry went through training, not just for autism. So that if you're in a restaurant, a hotel or whatever, and someone comes in and they wear, I think, like a yellow band or something. So it's not like pointing fingers. It's like, oh, I see you've got the yellow band. How can I help you today? In other words, what are your needs? Without pointing fingers, it's all about respect and compassion. So the whole community basically took classes, because then people understand. And I think if we can do more of that kind of moving forward with that kind of compassion, and it's understandable, because travel is really difficult for families with special needs. It's insane.
Yeah, we don't anymore. We really don't.
Well, part of what we do is document like parks and public lands and what are, are there places for folks with disabilities? Are there walkways, pathways, that kind of thing. And now we're actually starting to do recordings, audio recordings for blind people and people who are visually impaired so that they can hear what a park experience is like if they can't go because they're left out of the communications. If you have to vote on some environmental law, if you can't see it, everything's visual. They're left off, a lot of the times, not always, but majority. Right. So, it's attitude. And I have a friend, Joey Stuckey, who's on our shows all the time. He co-hosts our fourth Sunday Big Daily Blend show. He's a musician. He's the musical ambassador to Macon, Georgia. He's a composer, songwriter, just incredible musician, but also a recording artist. So he records people. He's a producer. Like all those buttons and knobs in a musical studio, he does, and he's blind. And he goes around the world teaching about accessibility for blind people in the industry and music and everything in life. He had a brain aneurysm and a tumor when he was a kid. And it was the procedure that actually saved him and then made him blind when he was a kid. But it was the day
life-saving poisons. That's what that is.
Yes. And so his parents were really so supportive. So now he's like a public speaker on positive impact in life and to have gratitude of what you do have. And so he has his birthday, but then he has what he's called Joey Stuckey Alive Day. And it's celebrating the day that he went blind because it saved his life. And so he brings musicians together in Macon and they do this big event because his parents said, well, you have 2 birthdays now. You're special in that regard. How many people get to have 2 birthdays?
Right.
So it's how we, our perception is our reality. Yeah. Yeah. So I really commend all the parents that are going through this. And, I think at times families become stronger through things,
Some do, some don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of families just like lose family members, and that blows my mind. I'm like, wow, they walked away or they wouldn't invite you to, a family gathering like that. It really blows my mind coming from a family who would never consider doing that to us. I'm grateful that was not my experience, but some people do have that experience. And then, friends become their family. They make their family, that's the way that they, move forward with it. But,
thank you so much for writing your memoir. Everyone, again, it's Fall and Recovery, Raising Children with Disabilities Through Lessons Learned in Dance. Again, it comes out through She Writes Press on September 17th, 2024. You can pre-order it now, and authors adore all their readers that pre-order. And if you're listening to this after it comes out, you could go buy it. So good, there it is. So go get it. And again, it's not just for parents, right? Or for family members. It is for everyone to read and understand, have some compassion, and that general understanding is so crucial. Again, it's Joanne De Simone, and that's DeSimone. So go to special-educationmom.com. Thank you so much, Joanne. Really appreciate you sharing your stories.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a joy to talk with you today.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.